you guys know we've been talking about the tariffs for quite some time. And China is one of those countries that has decided to respond to us in an epic way by slapping a 34% tariff as a retaliation against the United States government. You really can't get mad at them. I mean, what do you expect them to do? What do you expect them to do? So there's that response. But then there's something else that China did that I think a lot of people don't know about. And Eric sent me this story. This has kind of gone under the radar. Let's start with that retaliation first. Let's go ahead and get into that here.
Is China coming to the table or not?
Well, which table are you talking about? If they were coming into the ring to fight and take off the gloves and fight back, yes, they're going to be doing that. China has been fairly measured so far, and Xi Jinping essentially telling his government to remain calm until now. I think they had probably taken a little bit too many punches themselves, and finally 34% that takes effect on all U.S. goods imported into China on April 10th. So mid this week, there are a number of different export controls. They've added some defense companies to their so-called blacklist, the entity list. They are banning chicken imports from some American companies, sorghum from one American companies. Also, again, those rare earths, further restrictions on the outflow of rare earths, which China controls a large swath of them for the tech supply chain. You know, Danny was just talking about Apple. That is a good example of how these Trump tariffs do affect American companies who, after the first trade war with China, diversified to the so-called China Plus One strategy, going, Apple in particular, making, iPhones and Macs and other products in India, in Thailand, in Indonesia, Vietnam, and of course, Taiwan, a huge part of the tech supply chain, all of them getting sizable tariffs from the Trump administration. So it's going to be a balancing act, obviously, for China as it tries to rebalance its economy, to boost domestic consumption, to take up its excess industrial overcapacity. You have to watch what the markets are going to do today, because the markets here in Hong Kong and in China onshore were on holiday on Friday. They didn't take the brunt like the U.S. markets did on Friday. And also you have to watch the yuan. The onshore yuan, the currency, essentially weakening to its lowest level since February. And that is one concern that they could potentially, and they haven't so far, they've kept the yuan stable, they could potentially weaponize the yuan and weaken the yuan further.
Is China...
Okay, so China, guys, again, responding to the United States tariffs, 34%. And we do receive a lot of goods from China. This is what I was warning people about earlier on. That will impact us. Now, Donald Trump has responded and has decided to increase the tariffs towards China by 50%. I'm not kidding. When we talk about trade war, this is definitely a trade war. Check this out.
More now on the president's threat against China to impose an extra 50% tariff on goods imported into the U.S. if Beijing doesn't withdraw its 34% counter tariff. NBC's Janice Mackey-Frayer is in Beijing for us and has the latest on how China is reacting. Janice?
China responded to President Trump's threat of additional tariffs with defiance and its own threat of countermeasures to fight a trade war with the U.S. to the end. If President Trump goes through with what he has vowed, this additional 50% tariffs on all Chinese goods going into the U.S., that's 104% on anything consumers buy from China. Clothing.
104% on any goods that we buy that are from China. And Brenda, I believe, already said it in the chat. And that's the first thing I thought about, too. Temu won't be cheap anymore. No. I know a lot of us like Temu because Temu is very cheap. But no, it won't be. I'm also thinking about electronics. I'm thinking about people that work in certain industries where they do have to purchase electronics, whether it's certain computers, whether it's iPhones, iPads, like those types of things. You know, where are they made? And I think this could be really dangerous. Now, obviously, none of us want to have to pay that. None of us want to have to do that. And I think what Trump may be trying to do is to say, okay, I'm just going to fight back against you with this, kapow, you know. But this isn't Street Fighter and this isn't Mortal Kombat. And the rest of us live in the real world and we can't afford those things. And I'm saying right now, and I'm telling you guys, all of you that got an iPhone, What happens if you break your screen? And not to pick on you, it's just that my friends that have iPhones, they tell me they're the ones that crack their screens. I've never had a screen crack for my Samsung. Never. I've never had an Android screen crack. So I want you to think about these things. Like that, this is insane. And it's not a joke. And I feel like Donald Trump, he's just playing a joke, like with our lives. Oh, the American people, you guys can take this hit for a little bit while we just have this little trade war. No, someone like him can take that hit. As Max Blumenthal also mentioned, this is impacting billionaires too, right? Trump don't really care. But billionaires like Bill Ackman is speaking out against it. He's like, wait a minute, now this is starting to impact me. Let's go on a little bit more.
Shoes, car parts, toys, tech, household goods, the list goes on. China is very clear in saying it will not back down from imposing countermeasures to what officials here call U.S. blackmail. They see negotiation as legitimizing President Trump's trade blitz that is hitting manufacturing hubs right across Asia. Japan, Vietnam, Cambodia, South Korea, they're all signaling they want to negotiate with the U.S., though talks, it seems, are no guarantee of getting tariff relief. Here, a spokesperson for China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs confirmed there are no talks at any level between the U.S. and China over trade, saying, quote, the U.S. lacks a genuine willingness to engage in serious dialogue. Now, before the markets opened here today, the government unleashed a series of measures to help stabilize the stock market, including share buybacks by several state-owned companies. They're known here as China's national team, and that helped the markets close higher. The deadlines, though, are piling on now. All these back-to-back tariffs are set to take effect over the next 48 hours and threaten to disrupt trade, supply chains, and ultimately raise prices for U.S. consumers down the road. Janice Mackey-Freer, NBC News, Beijing.
So think about that there just for a second, right? So again, depending on what type of industry that you work in, that could be a problem. And I want to bring up manufacturing here for just a second. I know one of the things that people want is for manufacturing to grow again in the United States. People are like, bring manufacturing back. First of all, it should have never left in the first damn place. Had it not been for things like NAFTA, we probably wouldn't be in this situation. Let's just keep it real. But what I do want you to understand, when I said that oftentimes, even American businesses or mom and pop businesses, the products that they make may be made here in the US, but the materials come from other countries like China or like Mexico. I'm not joking. And that leads me again to manufacturing. When you talk about bringing manufacturing back to the United States and making it thrive and grow again, you can't just build a factory overnight. And with those factories, you need machines to make those products that you use and that you buy. But those machines aren't made here. Those machines are made in countries like China. So just think about anybody that's working in manufacturing right now. Yes, this could impact you. That means you will have to pay this almost double now, almost double for these machines for your business. So everyone will be impacted. That's what I meant when I said we don't really make stuff here. We really don't. We don't even make the damn machines to make the stuff. So that's a problem. That's a big problem. So part of the thing when people say bring manufacturing back to the United States, I would say part of that includes you have to start making those machines that are used in the factories. You have to start making those here first. And we're not doing that. Let's go on a little bit more. I'm going to show you something else that China did that's a doozy.
Joining us now is Ned Price, a former senior State Department and CIA official. Ned, when China says it will fight to the end, what could that look like?
Well, Anna, it will look like nothing good for American businesses and consumers. We've already heard from your correspondent that with these tariffs set to go into effect, it could double prices of imported goods from China. Look, Anna, there is no question that the playing field for American consumers and businesses needs to be leveled with China. But there is a smart way to do that. And then there is Trump's way. of doing that. And I think it's important to distinguish those two precisely because of what we've heard from Beijing and frankly from Washington over the past week or so. Trump's approach has done nothing but embolden leaders in Beijing. He has really imposed these massive tariffs in a mistaken belief that tariffs are not a means to an end, in other words, leveling the playing field, but really an end unto themselves. And he's given Chinese leaders really no face-saving off-ramp. We often forget that leaders like Chinese President Xi Jinping, while may not be elected in the democratic sense, may not be worried about his next re-election, is worried about his legitimacy and legacy. And Donald Trump has really put him in a corner. And just as you said, as your correspondent said, they're girding for a fight. And ultimately, a fight between the U.S. and China on these points will only result in higher prices for American consumers, precisely the effect that Donald Trump says he was elected to counteract.
Higher prices. Again, if there's one country to go to war with over trade, I would not choose China, since, again, a lot of things that we consume in the United States do come from China. I mean, I'm gonna keep it real. We ain't got it like that. When you compare us to China, we don't have the technology that they have. We just don't. We ain't got it like that. And I just, that's not someone you want to pick a battle with. And instead of fighting against China, why aren't we trying to work with them? Why does everything have to be, let's fight against this country instead of working with them and building and growing together? Because the US government, they want to dominate the entire world. It's like the US government wants to be the dominant power. And what I'm saying is that the days of that are going away. And you can see that with an organization like BRICS. You're seeing these countries are saying, we don't want a dominant power anymore. We want a multipolar world. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If you look at the Black Panthers in particular, they had a horizontal model. They talked about that. Horizontal. Why can't we be a part of that? Why can't we be a part of what BRICS is doing? Let's all just work together for a better world and a better society, right? But something else that China did that I think has flown under the radar, and this is interesting. Check this out. China just turned off U.S. supplies of minerals critical for defense and clean tech. Oh, snap. And this just happened. So again, a lot of people aren't paying attention to this just because there's been so much talk about the tariffs in particular, but not so much about this. Check this out. China calmly walked over to the supply chain and yanked out a handful of critical bolts. The bolts are made of dysprosium, terbium, tungsten, indium, and yttrium. The elements that don't make headlines, but without which your electric car doesn't run. Your fighter jet doesn't fly. Your solar panels go from clean energy marvels to overpriced roofing tiles. They're minerals that show up on obscure government risk registers right before wars start, or clean tech projects get quietly canceled. So here we go again, another thing that minerals that we depend on China for. What China did wasn't a ban, at least not in name. They called it export licensing. Sounds like something a trade lawyer might actually be excited about. But make no mistake, this was a surgical strike. They didn't need to say no. They just needed to say maybe later, or the right set of paperwork. These licenses give Beijing control over not just where these materials go, but how fast they go, in what quantity, and to which politically convenient customers. So this is interesting, folks. It says here also about the materials. Let's get to this part. The materials China just restricted are not random. They're chosen with precision of someone who's read the U.S. product spec sheets and defense procurement orders. Start with diosporium. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. I'm sorry, guys. If your electric motor needs to function at high temperatures, and they all do, then mostly it is using neodymium magnets doped with diosporium. No, diosporium. I'm sorry, guys. Damn. No, diosporium, no thermal stability. No thermal stability, no functioning motor in your F-35 or your Mustang Mach-E. China controls essentially the entire supply of dysprosium. And no, there is no magical mine in Wyoming or Quebec waiting in the wings. So if it does not come out of China, it doesn't come out at all. Then there's tungsten, the metal that makes bullets bulletproof. Literally, tungsten is what you use when you need to cut, drill, punch, or penetrate anything harder than a stale marshmallow. The US hasn't produced meaningful amounts of it since the Obama administration. And China sits on 80% of global production. Oh, sure, you can try Vietnam or Portugal, but good luck getting those volumes at scale without waiting years and paying triple. Tungsten isn't just ammunition. It is the tiny vertical connections between layers of circuitry and semiconductor chip, CNC machine tools, and high performance alloys that go into everything from jet engines to deep drilling rigs. When China put tungsten behind a licensing wall, it wasn't targeting one sector. It was targeting the industrial base of a specific big country that's trying to grow precision manufacturing at scale. And they go on to tell you more about these other materials as well. But do you get what they're trying to explain, guys? Is that these are materials that we know we can't just get it from somewhere else. We get it from them. And with all the discussion that has been happening about the tariffs, I found it interesting that when Eric sent me this article, I haven't heard people talk about this. I haven't heard people on the news talk about the materials that China just basically said, yeah, we're not sending it to you anymore. We're cutting you off from this. So people have to pay attention. Like I said, we just don't produce much here. So there's a lot to say about that, especially when we're talking about clean technology. That's another one, right? It says clean technology is next. It's going to hit U.S. dreams of actually manufacturing EVs, solar panels, and wind turbines for its domestic market hard. Without dysprosium and terbium, your EV motor gets downgraded to a clunky, less efficient design that eats more power and delivers less range. So for those of you who drive electric vehicles, that might be something you should know. Or if you want an electric vehicle, this might be important for you to know. So there's two sides of this story. One side is about the tariff war that is happening between China and the United States. But this other side of the story that has been kind of left out in the mainstream news are these materials that China just basically cut the US off from. And you really can't be mad at China about this. Because again, it's like poking the bear. Like instead of trying to work with these countries, the US government is trying to work against them. They're trying to fight them. And you can't really, it's like trying to fight the hand that feeds you. I don't know. Like right now, Donald Trump is pretending as though we don't need things from China. And we do. We don't have it like that. I'm sorry, but we just don't. We don't have it like that. And I don't know, guys. I don't know. I don't know how this trade war is going to end, but I damn sure know that Americans should not have to bear the burden. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.